What's up guys, and welcome back to my Pokemon Sun and Moon video, and today I'm going to be talking about the Ultra Beasts once again, but this time focusing on whether or not they will actually have typings in the games. Now, we have two arguments. Yes, they will have typings, everything has a typing in Pokemon. If we are to battle these beasts at some point, because, you know, why the hell wouldn't we be able to, because otherwise they're just going to be there in the story and cutscenes. If we're going to be able to battle them at some point, it's very likely they'll have some form of typing, because otherwise the battle will be a bit boring. And then we have, on the other hand, we have they're Ultra Beasts. They're a separate thing to Pokemon. Pokemon have types, yes, but that is a Pokemon thing. Ultra Beasts are from another dimension, they are hybrids, they are whatever they are, so they won't have typings. So there's two arguments to this. I believe that it's likely they will have typings, because as I said, we are expecting to battle them at some point. I'm expecting the Ultra Beasts to be like bosses for each island, so if they take the island over, obviously you have to go and win it back at some point. Sort of like the Elite Four, I suppose. But of course, you know, say UBO2 Absorption takes over Melee Island. Yes, okay, you have to go and take it back from him. How are you going to do that? You're going to battle him, okay? And it's very likely, if that's the case, that they will have typings, because otherwise, what are they going to do? There are a couple of options. One being, they can make it a sort of a neutral type. Not necessarily normal, but neutral. Meaning that every single type just does normal damage to it. So it's not weak to anything, it's not resistant to anything. It just takes normal damage from everything. Which I guess you know, would work. Or they could make it so that it takes reduced damage from everything. To make the battles particularly hard, but then of course it wouldn't matter, you know, there'd be no strategy to that battle or much. You'd just be able to send out your strongest Pokemon and attack it over and over again. Whereas if it had a typing, you can't necessarily say you chose Litten and it turns out that one of these Ultra Beasts is a water type, and obviously Litten's, the starter you get to isn't going to be very effective. You know, it sort of builds into the fact, Pokemon in general, it's like going to like saying types. If we didn't have types in Pokemon at all and every Pokemon did the same amount of damage to each other, then you could just build whatever the hell team you wanted. You could have a team of 6 Charizards for all you wanted, and you would not stand any less chance than if you built a team normally with a water type, a grass type, a fire type, etc. That's why we have types in Pokemon. So to remove types from basically boss battles, similar to gym battles or Elite Four bosses, would be a bit silly, because then it would remove the strategy for that. It would make it basically easier for you to defeat the boss. Whereas obviously, imagine facing off against one of those really strong legendary Pokemon and it not having a type. You could just defeat whatever you wanted. Whereas if you had one really strong Pokemon, say your Litten Final Evolution, it's a fire type, it's your strongest Pokemon, every other Pokemon on your team is 10-15 levels lower because you've just been using your starter all the time. Of course you're going to lose the battle, because, if the Litten isn't very good against this water type Ultra Beast, you're screwed. So it helps promote healthy building of a team in Pokemon. It's part of the game. So not having types would make those battles a bit boring, and you guys get where I'm going with this. So if we're to battle them, it's likely they'll have some form of type. Now, this could be a case of it's a set type like Pokemon do, because they could be similar to Pokemon, they could be related to them, hence they could have types and it could work like that. Or they could have a different sort of way it works. Maybe the type changes every turn, or maybe you do variable damage, something like that. We don't exactly know, of course, how it's going to work, but we're going to assume for the purposes of this video that we're going to get typings for these Pokemon. And obviously then we'll be able to battle them, and their type will affect what moves. And also, adding on to that, stab moves for the Ultra Beasts, if they're expected to attack back, they wouldn't get stab bonus, the same type attack bonus, from, say you got, again, a water type Ultra Beast. If it uses Surf, it's not going to get any bonus to it if it's sort of a neutral type, unless of course it was coded differently for the Ultra Beasts. So it's probably, that's why they're possible. That's the argument for why they would have types. The other argument being, of course, the Ultra Beasts are not Pokemon. So we're going to assume they will get typings, and we're going to look through the 3 Ultra Beasts we've seen so far and say, well, what typing would this Ultra Beast be, and talk about it basically. So we're just going to get him, and we'll start off with UBO1, of course, because it's the first one. UBO1. It could go a few different ways here. Actually 5 types I could see it being. These are obviously Normal, Fairy, Water, Ghost and Psychic. Now we'll talk through each of these. Normal is, I guess, because it's the first Ultra Beast. It's UBO1, so it is possible they could say it's UBO1, it's the very first one. Let's just make it Normal type because it's normal and it'll be the baseline for the other ones to go off of. That's one possibility there. It just makes sense in my eyes, and obviously it's not very colourful design. It's white, it's sort of pale coloured, so Normal sort of fits that genre. Not that I'm saying Normal is a bad type or anything like that, I'm just saying it might work, it might sort of fit thematically. Then we have Fairy, of course. The reason I'm saying this is because it is, as we've seen in the video of it, it is sort of a floaty Pokemon, I suppose you could say. It flows around a bit. Its tentacles sort of flow around, so I guess it fits the Fairy sort of design. If we think about Sylveon, it has its ribbons that float about, so that's sort of where I'm coming from there. It's one possibility. I'm not sort of strongly opposed to it not being Fairy, of course. It's just one possibility I'm listing. The water type, of course, is listed because UB1 is based off of basically a jellyfish, something along those lines, a sea creature almost, because of the way it sort of floats. It's obviously very similar to that sort of thing. So water type you might want to add in, and also you can see the blue rim on its, I guess I can call it hat, or its head or something like that. The blue rim could indicate it's part water, who knows, that's just another thought there. And then Psychic, obviously Psychic is very similar to Fairy, they're sort of interchangeable in some formats. So I could see Psychic possibly linking in there. Again, we don't know, we don't know a huge amount about UB01 quite yet, but we do know it has some sort of, not necessarily it has a survival instinct, but might not have a will of its own, so Psychic might work in that sense because it's sort of like innate psychic powers, I suppose. And then finally we have Ghost. The reason I think Ghost might work is because, as we see in one of the trailer videos where we have UB1 coming out of the portal, it gracefully lands down, so it's almost ghost-like in its movement. I could see it being part Ghost, or maybe even full Ghost, who knows, just because of the simple way. It's a bit of a mysterious Pokemon, it floats about, and obviously it doesn't have a will of its own, so Ghost, it might be possessed by the thing on the top of its head, for example. So Ghost is another one I could see working. Now I'm not saying it should be a pure one of these types, like a pure normal type, or a pure Fairy, or a pure Ghost. It could be a mixture, of course. It could be, I'm going to forget about normal for the moment, I'm just going to leave normal. It could be a Fairy water type, water Fairy type, mixing in the jellyfish, sort of the inspiration for that with the fairiness of its tentacles. The fairiness, I don't know what that is, but whatever. It could be a Psychic water type, linking in again with those sorts of connections, or again it could be Ghost Psychic, Ghost Psychic, we've seen that enough really. Ghost Fairy, for example, we've got getting Mimikyu, but it could also work there. So, I've not really got any defined ideas for UB01, but be sure to let me know what you think it might be, what type-wise it might be down below in the comment section, because if you have any sort of defined, like, yes, I think it's going to be this type, it makes sense this way, let me know, because I'm sort of just I've got no defined choices, they're just all possibilities. UB02s, however, are a bit different. First up we have UB02 Absorption, of course, and straight off the bat, it's very clearly would fit a fighting bug type. Fighting because, look at its muscles, they are gigantic, it's a huge Pokemon. Fighting would work very well, including the red sort of colour scheme, the sort of the dark red on its arms as well. It fits very well. And the bug, of course, because it's based on some form of mosquito, has obviously the long, I don't know what you'd call it, really long, it's not a stinger, of course, long proboscis, I don't know how to say it properly, but you guys get the idea, with the antenna and the wings on its back and the four legs. It sort of merges in the fighting, the strong arms from a person, the fighting type there, with the bug, sort of like parts of its body almost. So Fighting Bug would be a clear choice for typing there. That's what I would, if you told me to choose a typing for it, that's what I would say it would be. However, a Steel type, I feel, could also link in there. Now, we're told in the little description about UB02 Absorption we have that it's proboscis, this long steel silver thing coming out of between, I guess, what are its eyes, coming out there. We're told it's as hard as diamonds, so it's a very hard thing, so I feel like steel could possibly be incorporated there as one possibility, and also the fact that it has these silver lines across some of its muscles. I feel like maybe you could say like, oh yeah, it's like steel imbued into its fight. It's fighting, if it were to be a fighting steel type, it's got these big strong fighting, big strong muscles, but it's imbued with steel to make them even stronger, for example. That's how they could swing it there. When I was thinking about this, however, though, I thought of another possibility for Ultra Beasts and how it can be made bit different. Because obviously, if you're just giving typing to Ultra Beasts, yeah, sure, whatever. It's just making them exactly like Pokemon. Apart from the fact they might be extra strong, there's nothing to differentiate between them. We could come across something later on down the lines where they have extra abilities that make them more powerful or something. But the other idea I had is, what if this was sort of the way that Pokemon could experiment with triple typings. Now, of course, single and dual typings have been around since the very start of Pokemon. We started off with singles, and then, for example, obviously Bulbasaur is a grass poison type. Duals were there from the beginning. Triple typings, or I don't know, trio typings. I don't know how would best triple typings, I suppose, would be the best way to get around it. They've been discussed among the Pokemon community beforehand. Never sort of mentioned in the games. No one's ever said like, what if Pokemon had 3 typings or anything like that. It's not been hinted at all, but obviously the community has discussed it several times, saying like, oh, I wonder if they'll ever introduce it, add it in, because it could be a fun little thing, who knows. Obviously it's never been no one's ever thought, oh yeah, let's add the 3rd typing to Pokemon, that would be amazing, it's going to really balance it all out. No one's really thought of that, because what would you add? Let's, I don't know, I've got to find a Pokemon that would fit this now. I've got Pokemon cards sat in front of me, let's have a look here. Ditto, no, that's not going to help there. Okay, Caterpie, okay, its final evolution is Butterfree, we know it's a bug flying type, but we also know it has links to Psychic, so maybe, we could make Butterfree a bug psychic flying type. Okay, that's cool, good. But then you would get these situations where, okay, now it's weak to Dark as well. It's gained Stab on Psychic, but it's weak to another typing. Has it given any more resistances? I mean, Psychic type, probably no. Probably something there, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But you guys get the idea. It would be very hard to balance around it because you didn't have possibilities of 3 typings for every single Pokemon, and adding it into the main Pokemon sort of pool, population pool, would be a bit weird. Whereas adding it as a 3rd typing to Ultra Beast and saying that these Ultra Beasts have 3 typings each would be quite interesting, because it means they get 3 stab moves, so 3 stab types. So for example, Yu-Gi-Oh! Absorption could use a close combat with its strong fighting stab. It could use bug type, I don't know, it could use U-turn with stab, and it could also use a steel type move, for example Flash Cannon with stab as well. So that's a bonus there. That would be a good bonus for a 3rd typing on anything basically. The other downside to it, of course, though, is you gain extra weaknesses. So, for example, if UItra Beasts was indeed fighting bug and steel type, it would have a 6 times weakness to the fire type. 6 times. Thought it would gain an extra, 2 times weakness to the fire type, so it would be weak in both bug and steel. So it would be doubly weak to fire just by adding the steel type on. It would, however, gain a bit of resistance to the flying type, because of course it was weak to it with the fighting and the bug. But now you've got the steel in, so you'd only be 2 times weak to that. Of course, we don't know exactly if we had 3 typings how they would all stack up with your strength, your moves and how effective they are. Because obviously you could say yes, okay, fighting 2 times weak to, it takes the double damage from flying type moves. Bug takes doubled again, so it goes to 4 times, and then steel, okay, it's going to take half, so it goes back to 2, or it could multiply up a different way. Who knows? They could change it around if they really wanted to balance stuff out, but that's an example of how it would change things. So you could, depending on the typings they chose, of course, if instead of having fighting there you had grass, if it was grass, bug, steel, that's a very bad typing because it's 6 times weak to fire, so anyone choosing Litten as a starter would be having a very good time there. So they would have to balance out correctly, and maybe, as I said, change around how the bonuses are calculated for triple typings. It's one possibility, but it's just something I thought I'd throw out there. I've spoken far too much on the issue there for absorption in general. But let me know if you think triple typings would be a viable way to make Ultra Beasts extra sort of scary. Would that be something you'd like to see introduced? Of course, I'd have to make sure it would be done correctly, but it's an idea. Let me know what you think about that down below. But we'll move on to the other Ultra Beast we have to talk about, which of course is UB02 Beauty. Now, keeping with the bug theme, because of course Absorption is based on a mosquito, and Beauty seems to be based either, people have said cockroach, I don't see that, but there's also two other types of bug, sort of bug related animals that Beauty could be taking reference from. One being silverfish, because obviously, think of silverfish from Minecraft, for example. They're grey, they're sort of rounded and got pointy ends almost, so that's what it looks like. And there's also copepods as well they could be based off of. Copepod being basically a small thing. It's got like a white body with 2 long antennas. So basically bugs, obviously copepods aren't exactly bugs, you guys get the idea. Bug, I feel, would work quite well with it. And instead of having fighting like Absorption does, you could give a fairy typing to it, so be fairy bug type, for example. I feel like that would work quite well. You see Beauty, we know Beauty's all about, beauty, so, I don't know how to best explain it, making other Pokemon and people possibly become immobilized by love, taking it straight from Pokemon there. So I feel like that would work reasonably well, and of course looking at Beauty's design, Fairy would work fairly easily as well. You've got a white sort of colouring and it's all flowy and stuff, similar to UB01. Did I say UB02? I said UB1, who knows. But as well as this, I could also feel Psychic, as I said, Fairy and Psychic are fairly interchangeable. I feel like a Psychic could work in here, and as I mentioned just now, triple typing they could have Fairy, Bug, Psychic. There's just another possibility I'm throwing out there. Again, looking at how that would affect, obviously be weak to Dark type, times 2, but it would gain, or it would lose its resistance to dark type. Did I say dark type already? Who knows? Yeah, it would lose its resistance to dark type and become neutral to it, because obviously fairy psychic, but it would then gain psychic stabs, of course, and I can't even remember what psychic, again it would lose its bug resistance as well because of psychic. I can't remember what bug resists, to be honest, off the top of my head, so you guys get the idea though. Triple typing maybe is a good thing, as I mentioned. Let me know what you think about that down below. But apart from that, let me know what you think the typings of UBO2 and Absorption and UBO2 Beauty are down below. And of course, don't forget about UBO1 too. Let me know if you have any ideas about that. But of course, those are the 3 Ultra Beasts for now. Let me know what you think about the whole sort of general subject is. Do you think they're going to get typings? And if they do, what do you think they're going to be? And of course, do you think triple typings are a good way to make the Ultra Beasts a bit more daunting? Let me know down below what you think of this. But for now, this is going to be it for me for today. I'll be seeing you next time. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, my friends.